This past November, I was honored by Phillips Brooks House with an Alumni Award, which was very meaningful to me. Assembled were people with whom I'd worked for many, many years. I was moved by their accolades, but I was more moved by seeing them all in person. I know them all intimately, you all intimately, if you're watching, and yet you never had come to know one another. I think there was great strength in you knowing who you are collectively. And we try to further that in this little video that I offer here by labeling the class, the names of folks who spoke in their class, hopefully to encourage you to continue this crusade. The people in this presentation, which was suggested by the people from the decades who signed the preamble, which is to follow, Ken, Shelley, Vaughn, and Stephanie, um, are totally unique. I also must stop to thank the my director of communications from the Robert Johnson Foundation's funded Sports Philanthropy Project, who helped put the technical piece of this together. Anyway, the people who are honored and who speak are magnificent folks, and they're the founders of the modern Phillips Brooks House, no doubt about it, and of the summer urban programs. They range from 1968 way up to Hari Han, Vin Penn, and Roy Bahat, with a sprinkling of Lisa Tomlinson's energy carrying forth the crusade. The model which we're talking about was a confederation of community-based, community-funded, and community-organized schools without walls, summer and year-long, uh, in which we lived with the folks whom we mentored and in turn were mentored by. The model is nationally recognized, cost effective, and it was created in time of direct opposition from the college until the college's very hostile takeover, and yet it survives today. And so, as we all embrace one another, I present to you the embrace. Thank you.
I'm sorry that I couldn't be there with you tonight so that I could say in person how important a figure you were to me during my college years and how big a difference your early mentorship made for me over my entire career. I couldn't be more grateful to you for the important start you enabled me to have and the meaning and purpose it's brought to my life. I hope that my attempts to pay that support forward to other young professionals has had a modicum of the impact that you had on me and others like me in our early journeys towards public service.
I think when I was young and callow in college, you provided a home for me and mentorship and support that I didn't even know I needed, but has continued to be valuable throughout my life.
Thank you for being a role model, a friend, a mentor, a guide. I can honestly say without question that this great life that I've been able to live would not be possible without all the love and support you poured into me, including making me see that you could spend a life, build a career in service to kids, in service to families, in service to community. You've always been a big part of my life. You and Ken have meant the world to me, and I'm just so glad to have an opportunity to celebrate you.
Greg, I was thinking about what I wanted to say here and realized that I don't want to talk about all the ways that you've modeled public service values and actions all through your career, which you have, or the many things that you taught the people in the room with you tonight and myself, things that we went on to use in our own careers, which you did. But instead, I just want to say how it's incredible to look back and think about how year after year at PBH, you managed to bring together such disparate groups of people with so many different opinions about how the work should be done, what the work should be, what it should look like, and you still made Brooks House feel like home.
Greg, it's been a minute. I'm here to say something you may not know, which is you changed my life. Yeah, PBHA taught me about what it means to serve and a lot of lessons and bumps on how to lead. And yes, when I walked into the building for the first time as a sophomore after having volunteered for a year at Mission Hill, and you were standing at the front of the room with Vin Pan and Ken Reeves and telling us we had to stand up and fight for what we wanted to do if we wanted to keep doing it, all that was powerful. But the real moment, a few months into knowing you, you pulled me aside and you said, Roy, you think you're going to get a lot better at this as you get older. You're not. You're as good now as you're ever going to be, which on the one hand was really empowering. On the other hand, scared the shit out of me. And you might have been right, but I kept fighting on. And that is in large part thanks to you.
I'm so fortunate that our paths crossed over 30 years ago at PBHA and that they continue to cross today. I am a better person today because of you, and I want you to know how grateful I am for that. And you and PBHA have been such a critical part of my life that 34 years after, I still have this, which wouldn't have happened without you. Congratulations, my friend.
So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for everything that you created for all of us.
I'm Madison. I am Greg Johnson's little brother. And I met Greg in 1968 in Columbia Point Housing Project. And he's been in my life ever since. Greg has been, I wouldn't be standing here if it wasn't for Greg Johnson. Greg has been the most positive role model male in my life, all my life. He's more than a big brother to me. He's God sent. Every aspect of my life he's been a part of. He knows every piece of me. He probably knows more about me than I know about me. He's introduced me to Phillips Brooks House. I used to go downstairs and get milk and cookies with Joe, and way back when. And I remember, like, when I was going to the University of Michigan and I came home, my work wasn't done. Greg said, since you live in Academy Homes, why don't you start a program there? And that was the birth of the Academy Homes program back in, I believe it was 1979. Yeah, 79, right around there. I'm getting old too, so I might have a little bit of that dementia stuff. So yeah, Greg is, I could be anywhere and I pick the phone up and call Greg. Greg always calls me back. Greg's a writer, as you all know, and as well as many other things that he does. But I'm sure I'm in his writing somewhere throughout, in his books and his stories and stuff, because he's just been, we have been so interconnected. I've had the privilege of not just knowing Greg, but knowing Greg's entire family, from Rhode Island, all the way through, from his father, his mother, his brothers, and I've just been exposed, he's exposed me to things I would have never been exposed to if he didn't come into my life. And not only me, just many of the other kids from the Columbia Point Housing Project. So, Greg, I love you so much. It's just like, it's beyond measure, right? I have brothers, but I don't have anyone like Greg. Greg is always, no matter what crisis I've been going through, no matter how rough life was, he's still there. He knows my children. He's at my wedding. He's at my son's Christian. He's at my mother's funeral. He's just so present that it's beyond words. I just love you so much, and I just thank you so much for being a part of my life. And never giving up on me. Life can get rough at times, but Greg's always been that positive brother. He's never scolded me about anything. He's just always pushed me to another level of just being a better person, being a better human being, giving back, never give up on yourself. Keep going no matter what. He's that dude. So I'm just glad he was a part of my life. So from 8 years old, I shared this last little piece. I remember my mother had 5 kids, and she just couldn't handle them. So, and I wasn't a good kid. I grew up in the project. I was a little terror kid probably, but my mother would call Greg and says, you got to go up there and you got to do something. I don't know what to do with him, and he's been doing it ever since. So my mother's probably up there saying, thank you, Greg. Yeah, so I love you.
Finally, in the 80s, Greg returned to PBHA to serve as graduate secretary and later the association's founding executive director, and also to be a mentor to me and everybody else at PBHA. He started many of the programs, and he's the cornerstone of the Summer Urban Program, and making sure that we met people where they were. So, excuse me. So we had to go live in the community, and we had to talk to the parents, and we had to be there, and not these Harvard students who just come in and kind of do whatever and leave. We had to be there for them, and that was very important to Greg, for us, and I think it helped us to develop as people and to be really grounded in the work that we were doing. And Greg, he taught us many things. How some of them were great things, and some of them were, I don't know. I remember probably a lot of us, well, at least for me, being like a little girl from the South, a little debutante from the South. He was the first person who took me drinking. And I think a lot of people probably had that experience. But he taught me how to do it responsibly, or around people who were going to be able to take care of me and make sure I didn't do anything too wild. So, I really appreciate that. And like Radisson said, he was always there for us and would teach us so many things. He did put us in situations where we were fundraising or working with city council members or other people. They might get a little mad at us and call us different names because we could be pushing things to Greg. He's like, why don't you do this? And you go say this and do this. So I'm like, okay. And so then I would be the one who got yelled at and cussed out because I was doing what Greg said. But it worked, and we would get a lot of things that we needed for the programs with which we worked and things like that. Also, Greg was not only managed his work, he was also the surrogate father to a son, his Dale Johnson, who came to work at Phillips Brooks House after being in the Academy Homes program as the accountant. And Dale couldn't be here because his son was sick. He would have been here, but he wanted to make sure that I mentioned his name. So Greg, you make sure you tell him that. And because he wanted us, to give his thanks for what Greg, because Greg helped him to make sure that he also got through many difficult situations in school and different things like that. So now he's in New York doing great things with a family and things like that. So Greg is also, and like today at the program at the Letterworks, the breakout discussions, every month, it seems like at every table, Greg's name was mentioned as someone who helped them, or he was the impetus for them. And so I think it's so, for everybody and all 50 decades. But and a lot of they did mention Greg, and even the people who didn't, they had heard stories of Greg and what he had done and how they got their programs and got them, other people before them to where they were. So I thank you, Greg, and I'll get my money then. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Vincent Tan. I worked with Mission Hill After School Program in the early 1990s, and I served as Phillips Brooks House Association President in 1995. And as Phillips Brooks House Association President, I got to work with Greg Johnson. And Greg taught me so many different things, but one of the things he taught me was how to be an advocate. And I remember working with Greg, and we would go to Washington, D.C., and we would press the Corporation for National Service and AmeriCorps in its earliest years to make sure that service was not a transaction, but that was about transformation. I remember working with Greg in the League of Cities with Frank Duhay and Ken Reeves, and to push institutions of higher education to fulfill their responsibilities to the communities in which they were situated. I remember going with Greg to talk with groups like Campus Compact and people like Susan Stroud, and to make sure that this wave of service learning programs that were being developed put service first and not the learning of the college students that had it. And so for many of us who are now older and have family members in college and have been in different places in the country, you'll see Greg's legacy on every single campus. It's not just here at Harvard and places like Yale. It's in every single community college, every single public state university. When you see service learning programs, when you see students being able to earn financial aid, not just by working in the campus kitchens or cleaning up the dorm room bathrooms, but by being involved in the community, that's Greg's legacy. When you understand that now the idea of having students see their academic classwork connected to real practice and to real lives, in classes throughout the country, that's Greg's legacy too. And so all of us demand, I think, that Greg deserves the credit for his service, not just at Phillips Brooks House, but beyond. So thank you, Greg. One of the important lessons Greg taught me was the importance of telling the truth. And in my time at Harvard, Greg and I fought vigorously to try and protect everything that we think is important about Phillips Brooks House Association, that in this contradictory place called Harvard, there could be a corner of Harvard Yard that is about a community of conscience, of people who are trying to make sense of all the hypocrisy and the well, but also the prophecy. In my time at Phillips Brooks House, Greg and I fought to try to preserve what we think is still the most important parts about Phillips Brooks House. And I was walking around on the campus today, and in the 30-some years since I graduated, I've only come back to campus, I think, once or twice. It's not because I live internationally or that I'm not able to travel, but because I've never forgiven Harvard for the way they treated Greg. And I want you to know that the right way. And I know that some people here might not know the details, or you might not know the stories, but the reality is that many of us do, Greg. And if this recognition could be one part of beginning to tell the truth of how important Greg's legacy was, not just to Phillips Brooks House, but for trying to redeem what Harvard has been and what Harvard can be. So thank you. Many of you may know Greg is also a writer, and so he was also a teacher to me. And so, many of us know the legacy of Dr. Robert Golds. And so in those lectures, we would, hear and learn, and in those classes we would read. And Dr. Coles inspired us to think about our moral imagination, and what a beautiful phrase, our moral imagination. When working with Greg, we had the chance to put it into action. We had a chance to actualize it. And I don't know if you remember Greg, but he made meaning of Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, and Camus' The Rebel, and Kafka's The Trial. All these. I think all through that, I've come to understand that all of us are flawed, but we can be flawed in a particular direction. And so, if you are to be not principled enough or too principled, Greg taught us that be too principled. If you could be not trusting enough or over trusting of college students, to err on the side of being over trusting. And at the end of the day, still in these times that we live in, if you can err on the side of being too pessimistic or too optimistic, err on the side of being too optimistic. So for these lessons, Greg, I thank you deeply, and I know many of us thank you as well. And I have the privilege, I think, there are some folks in the audience who have already been self-identified who are going to stand from their seats and say a little bit about Greg as well.
My name is Steve Thomas. Greg, you have been a friend and a mentor of mine for over 40 years, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart for bettering the lives of so many. Thank you.
My name is Remy Cruz, and Greg Johnson, to me, is one of the most intelligent and humble people I've met in my life. At Harvard, he encouraged me to be myself despite adversity, and taught me to focus on what I could control. And his mentorship has had a lasting impact on me, and I'm deeply grateful. I love him, Greg.
My name is Simon Yang, and class of '88, I started the Chinatown Adventure program. Greg was a mentor, a teacher, and maybe most importantly, also a fixer. All those of you who have been working on the summer programs now, he knows his contributions in helping to inspire countless Harvard students and also improving the lives of many in the Boston area communities. So, of course, for me, the most important thing that I've gotten from Greg is the Chinatown Adventure. And without Greg, there wouldn't be a Chinatown Adventure. His unfailing support, encouragement, and advice, oftentimes disguised in the form of pestering, do all these things, really made all the difference. So thank you, Greg.
My name is Van Lee. I've been very lucky because Kevin Greg has been much for more than 40 years. I worked with Greg at CEH. I was saying about that. They echo all of the public feedback said about Greg and what he sent to us. But I also got to work with Ken, and I didn't know Ken is working together. I didn't, because back in the 80s, a lot of companies were not help. So I didn't even know that there were gay couples. In Vietnam, we were very repressed about that. And so Greg, I said, Greg, I don't have a job in that way. I said, I worked with in Reed. I think no people got the work time. But I had the pleasure of working with Ken, and between Ken and Greg, they were the dynamic duos of faith and positivity, reassurance, nurturing, and I'm lucky that they are the godparents of my daughter. People was on the wait list, and then no one called it. Next day, things ended like who's quite 5 years old. Really don't. So personally, they've said a lot to me. But I want to talk a little bit about the privilege I had working with Greg after Carnegie. Some of you may know that Greg started working with professional sports teams to bring his gospel and his MIT his vision for what the stakeholders can do in the community. And professional sports teams wield a lot of power, a lot of attention, and they have the microphone. And so who's better to go in there and really shake things up but Greg Johnson. And I was his sidekick for 10 years. We got the Robert Johnson Foundation to fund our works moment to help. And I can tell you that FABU has worked with Greg in college and through college years. He brought that to the professional sports industry. We worked with the Major League Baseball on team level as well as the league level. We know audit and what they were doing every couple of years. They did 3-4 times. Then we reported to the commissioner on how things to be done and what programs worked and what programs were just pure positive, didn't keep much. Sure, he wasn't any good at it. So I saw him bring that energy and passion long after his years at Harvard. Greg, thank you. Ken, thank you also. You've meant so much in my life, and I can't return your kindness. I can bring you wine. I stopped bringing the scotch because that's, it's where I was spending years. So thank you, and thank you Dave for putting on a wonderful day. I was very down like many of us, and it was just so inspiring to see the students and everyone can share the dean of their work with Brooks House, and a lot of it, as you know, was very, very much impacted by Greg. So, Greg, thank you. Chit-chatting, and we think that Greg Johnson should have a portrait in Phillips Brooks House.
My name is Christian Cooper, and as a young Harvard student, and it's hard to believe now, but before I ever back on Luca, he was eating I was lost. I was a black kid in a white legacy institution. I was a queer kid in the street world, and I was an all-around oddball. But I wanted to do good. So I went to Phillips Brooks House. I ended up at the Cambridge Youth Enrichment Program. And there, at Phillips Brooks House, I met this confident guy named Greg. He was older than us, but not quite that much. And still, but he was not only working to make the world a more just and equitable place, but he was helping others, us lost youngsters, because we were all lost. He was helping us lost youngsters to do the same. So I want to say, you showed the way, Greg. Thank you. And what a powerful example. And in the rough times ahead, may we all continue to do this.
Greg, somebody, you also spoken.
Wait, more people.
Sorry.
That's okay. My name is Rihanna Johnson, and I am from the class of 93. And I did inner city outreach Franklin, Iowa, while I was at Harvard. So I'm not going to get emotional, but there are, I think everyone has like moments in their life that are life-changing, and if a certain event or situation hadn't happened, your life could have went a different way, and grace is that for me. I think like many of us, PBH is just someplace very special. I don't know that it can be fully replicated, but I think what makes PBH special is the people that are there. And so I was so very grateful for Greg, even Lee getting me jobs and stuff. That's a whole nother side story. But it's so moving when people see potential in you that you don't even see in yourself. And so as a student that was struggling at Harvard, not academically, but just with my family background and trying to support my family at home and do work that I thought was important and get my education. I actually was reading in my journal. I've journaled since I was in high school, and I've been very reflective lately, and this is all by accident, so nothing should be by accident. I picked up my journal and I was looking at Greg's name was a, and it was when he was asking me to, you wanted to bring President Greenstein and Robert Cole to visit Aya in the summer. And I was like, oh no, we're a mess right now. No. But obviously we weren't. But so just like things like that where I'm thinking, like my standards are so high, but I think Greg always had the ability to see and truly more in our potential and bring that out in us. When I was being selfish as a student in programming, he forgave me and told me, you have to look out for the other programs. It's not all about IO. And I needed to hear that at the time. So I thank you for that. But what I really thank Greg for is there was a new program coming out called Equity Breed. I had never even heard of it. And Greg calls me down one day, gives me the application. He says, I want you to apply for this. I didn't even know what it was, but that was life-changing, light for me. I started a school. I've been in education ever since. And every student, every family, every parent, every community that I have impacted, Greg has impacted because it's from him. And I feel like that's the main thing that we do. All of us, like the amount of influence that you have in this world, I don't think you can measure because of all the people. I was talking to Rich Curry, he was here, and we were saying the same thing. Like all of the things that we are doing is because of you. So I would really
Thank you. Play again on list. I'm Shelley Taylor. I did see YP. Add my voice to the others in terms of saying all of the things that Greg did for us. There was a time I used to go by his office every day, and we would talk about lives and our families. Mine is crazy because I'm not comment on this, but you know, and there's too much to say. I think it's much to say and about the life-changing. Really changed my life, but still, things I learned you really are. They're still informing my life, making my life better. So I really appreciate you for that and for your friendship. And, you know, two things about the summer programs. Greg told me that during CYP, which, by the way, as you may know, Greg and he also, in Mattel, and the late Josh Clifford started this program at Columbia Point. And, you know, that was kind of the beginning that really the foundation of Gatsby of, you know, what is great about PBHA. But the other thing I really want to say that Greg taught us all, it's about how to fight a good fight. You know, how to fight. You know, how to stand up, get up, speak out, lock arms, you know, bang on the door, keep banging until they open the door. Or, you know, you find another way to get in, you know, to fight for what's right, for what's decent, and, you know, do the right thing for real. So we are all in the ship.
Beautiful. After that, I was in the Columbia Point, the Brothers Rock Band, and also working in Cambridge by the Sea. Greg's a big guy, right? A big party of guys. How many people do you know in your life who have this big heart as Greg? Ask yourself, how many people do you know? Columbia Point
is a high-rise public housing project. The elevators along the Gulf Path, just built on a garden stump. And the nearest store was miles away. Those people were, you know, we talk about these little more not first base, those people were, you know, kind of like down on the field until to the time their parents were helping and pushing. But Greg's heart is at Columbia Point. You heard about some of those stories tonight, what he did when he was a student, and what he continued to do years later. It's amazing. It's amazing to me just hearing all the stories of how he was a mentor and helped people. Even before the story started, I heard 3 of them just from being around these talking to people here. So it's really amazing. If we could stay here a lot longer and have these persons out there here, that would be good. But my feel, a big-hearted guy. We love you, Greg. And what people said, your life legacy keeps growing in this forever. So thanks. This feeling, it's theirs.
Greg, only a few people have spoken, but I hope you understand. This room is just, our hearts are full of gratitude for you and for what you've taught us. You've been a mentor to so many of us. I didn't know I was working class until I arrived at Margaret. Because you told me. And honestly, you know, it's perfectly possible for a naive kid from the sticks or the boondocks of New Hampshire to come down and get involved in community work, and for my own assumptions and prejudices to just be reinforced by what I see on the street. You made sure that we stepped back, we reflected, we understood the structural nature of the things that we were dealing with. We made sure that all of our service work had a social and political and economic edge. You took me under your ideological wing, and I'm never been the same. So Greg, from all of us, you've heard about how your work has rippled off, right? So many of us have been influenced by you, and then we in turn have served in other capacities. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I've had a chance to get to know some of the current PBH leadership, both student and staff, and just imagine what wonderful staff you have. At Greg's time, all of you were rolled into one person. We had Lee, we had Nancy as a bookkeeper, and we had Greg as the graduate secretary doing all of that extraordinary work, being that kind of foundation. As a friend, as a mentor, Greg Johnson, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, well, now you know one another. I've always known you. And you know, nothing's going to stop. Don't worry about it. And it's difficult for me to speak after Bob Yan. He always gives best speaks. They're high, Mabel. But they were going to make me speak after Ken. I said no. I'm going to back up to talk about a place that many don't know about, so that I'm not in competition for what you have to say. And I'm going to go back to the last person I saw do this was Tim McCarthy. I tried to fashion this little acceptance speech after Tim, so tell you a little bit about myself, a little bit about what Brooks House meant to me, and then an uplifting auxiliary, uplifting anecdote. So here goes. My name is Greg Johnson. I'm the son of a Swedish immigrant who came to the country in 1927 in a boat with his siblings and his mother, that I was telling Vaughn was close to his story. He came when he was 7, but there was war back, and
he had a better book. When he came here, he was met with the Depression and the war, and he achieved the American dream of a beautiful family, but the price of the ticket was he was an asbestos worker. He was mesothelioma, and he passed of it during 65 years of age. My mother was born and from an even more scrappy background. She was her mother, maternal grandmother, was like Narragansett and poor English working class, like U.P. Thompson's quote. She, her father was the Narragansett, sold her to a guy when she was 14 years of age to go to get married in Old Scotia Square. She started having a bunch of kids, and through tuberculosis, depression, running away from the rent collectors and tenements, and the guy threw himself in the ocean and he died. Then she met my grandfather, who was a one-arm elevator operator in the Biltmore Hotel in Providence. He was fired for unionizing. Of course, he comes from great lineage. He was a one-arm guy like John Silver, and he was a yellow cab driver. But when I knew him, my mother was the third of his children, and she was educated in the Rhode Island public school system, Providence public school system. She received a moralist education, and that showed me that public education, it works. It can work, it did work, it does work. She then went to Rhode Island Hospital School of Nursing and provided for us by being a nurse for 40 years or so after that. My two brothers were born in the 50s, and we all received very good education in the public school systems of Rhode Island. And mother was in the 40s, mine in the 50s and 60s. It worked. It worked so well that a fellow named Seamus Mallon, who later became the famous soccer announcer in the United States, was in the Harvard admissions office, and he was commissioned to take a look at my school in Warwick and recruit people from it. And so one day he came down and he brought me the Harvard book, which is a literary book, and he said, if you take this book and bring it on, it's a ticket to get in and get a scholarship too. I took it and I got in, and now it sits on my mantle next to my 50th reunion book, Assembly Bond and Red Crimson. I haven't read either of them very much, but that's how I got in. Before the time was in the school, I was third in the class of the high school, and I was asked, I had to make a speech to the class. And it was spring of 1968. It was in June. Dr. King had been murdered, assassinated in April. There were riots, race riots in the street. The Vietnam War was raging. We all were going to have to go to it to be redrafted. People in my neighborhood were coming back maimed physically, psychologically, or in coffins. And then we were driving to Harvard. We didn't know what Harvard was. We'd seen it in Time magazine, none of people had been to college, and we didn't know really how to get there. We knew how to get to Fenway Park. So my father drove me up on Route 1, and 95 hadn't been opened yet. And we found Fenway, and then we asked for directions to Cambridge. Get on that Route 1, it was crazy Jamaica way from up here. So he dropped me off in Pennypack Hall across the street from the Goodbye Columbus church, that's soon to become famous with a movie starring our roommate, Doug Harris. And if he sees this, he'll laugh. My first year there, I was lost. I felt like Jay and the rest of you that I didn't know that I belonged, and I was lonely, didn't know what to do, and I thought I was unique. And of course, subsequently, I know we all feel that we're lost the first year at Harvard, but I tried everything to fill my life and the loneliness in it. I tried everything. I tried to play freshman football, where I met my fierce football buddies, Bob Gannon and Lou Finchman. We crushed everyone, but it wasn't enough to satisfy me. I took all the difficult gen ed courses to get them out of the way, bio to the whole biology, crushed into half a year, math 1A, what have you. I tried to act at the low, but I failed in my casting couch audition. I raised the bells to do. And it's still very lost. After the football season, I was rejected back in Pennypacker, where I lived on the fourth floor in one of those little submarine rooms. Could fit 2 bunk beds in one desk, and the desk wasn't mine. And Peter Wyman, my roommate, said he'd been up to a place called Brooks House, and he'd found a little brother there. His Army Brothers program was called, and the college was still segregated. We weren't supposed to have women in the dorms living there, and we were supposed to wear jackets to the freshman year, and we just put a shirt over a shirt, and, you know, we changed penance that way. But I went in and saw Edie Smith, and she said, go down in the basement and talk to these 2 guys, Russ Collier and Jay Kaplan. They'll tell you about a program they've been working in Columbia Point, which is, Lou mentioned, is an 8,000 member community in Dorchester, where JFD and Stop is now. And Russ had been living there, and they were going to soon ask if we could live there in the summertime, but this was just to give me if I would take on a little brother. And I said, yeah, okay, and then one day, a little, and the housing project was a difficult place. It was the dividing line between black folks and white folks in Dorchester at the time. It was very difficult, and the great demonstration of history of Boston's racial strife. Anyway, in the middle of my loneliness, a little 9-year-old came on the bus, the number 1 bus from Dudley, and he stopped at the Hong Kong restaurant, and bought some shrimp fried rice, offering to me to God to see him with my shot. And he gave me, and then, of course, this is medicine, and he gave me comfort, joy, and he stabilized me. I was 19, he was back, and it was obvious. And he brought me home to like a community of working people in Columbia Point. His family, the other families there, and we're still tight. It was a beautiful place, however you've seen it described. And we did, you know, all kinds of activities together, and it's a shame. We watched the place be attacked, and like we know what we know. That summer, Russ and Jay asked me to go out and live at Columbia Point out in Lake Stop to run a summer program that they were putting together, and we did, and we structured it with 6 or 7 groups. It was just boys, because Sarman was different from Radcliffe, and we had about we rented kids 6 to 12 years of age. There were about 8 kids in each group. Each kid was matched up with a counselor, a Harvard undergraduate, and a junior counselor was a teen from the housing project. And we went out there and we got housing from the Boston Housing Authority, returned for services rented, so we would live there, and that was critical to the experience. And we ran programming for 8 weeks. We funded it ourselves with the help of the community. We got some stuff from Harvard, but some stuff from the neighboring corporations and stores in conjunction with the community. We fed the money through the Columbia Point Community Development Corporation, 501c3, and some of it. So if we were getting on Harvard's nerves, we just found money through that. And that was fine. There was no Phillips Brooks House Association Inc. at the time, so we were just run out of the president's office. Later, President Bach and President Martina Horner incorporated PBHA Inc. So we would have 2 places through which to conduit the money. And it wasn't until much later that we became immersed in the Dean of College's office. Peter Gomes protected us against that in the beginning because we were an audio presence office and through the Mormon Church. At Columbia Point, we ran a school without walls, and we didn't need classrooms, we didn't need anything. We just needed the folks, transportation, and the kids didn't come in the morning. We'd go to the house and get them, and we'd have certain leaders, and they'd get the other kids. And that's what Madison remembers. We that summer in 1969. I witnessed a lot of things, and one was Obo's idea. Madison's brother was 2 years old. I still remember he was going to come to that. He was 2 years old, and he was just sitting on the curb in Columbia Point in the rain, and the was running down, playing with the cans, and that's what he did to play. I've known him for long after, but it was just marvelous. People interpret it differently, but that's not so. What we were able to do in, I told this how much fun. Yeah, that summer I witnessed a lot of things. I witnessed a man shot to death on the street, which one was a PBHA in the suburbs. And conversely, we took all the groups on camping trips to the Green Mountains, the White Mountains, the Adirondacks, the Catskill Mountains. We bivouacked, and we just set up camp and took the pup tents, and wherever we could go, we spend a week there. Under the tutelage of John Slittrick, who was died this past year. He was in the Vietnam Veterans Against the War. He'd just come as a Marine from the Mud Daddies in Vietnam, and it was with Carrie's group of Vietnam Veterans Against the War. And he had grown up public housing himself, 3 years old, and I showed us hunting to the darkness in the field of 12. A couple of other things that happened. I remember I was enlisted to help. I remember one of the brothers used to about to have this over for sex, drums, and rock and roll. Those were the days. It was the age of Aquarius. Those were the days when my family, they never had sing and dance. And then I remember political things happening. There was a half-black, half-white community in Puerto Rico. They can call everybody Spanish. Puerto Rican young man was arrested by the Boston Irish cops for trying to kill someone, and the mothers who were community organizers, mothers on the bench, they ran the project. It was very well organized. It was a community. They weren't scattered all over the place. They said, we have to go to that police station and tell them that it was not the Puerto Rican kids who did it, and they have to let them out, or else we're going to have riots here. And they said very graphically, some Germans, they said, they were going to come over their machetes, and they were going to come and get us, and it'd be a race riot, a three-way race riot in Columbia Point. But they said, the Irish cops are not going to listen to us. You have to come with us. And you have to come with us in the middle of the night now. And so we went to a jalopy car and a couple of mothers and his father or two, and we went up to the Irish police station, and the Irish cops opened the door and said, who the F are you? And we said, this is what we need, and they deliberated a while. They let the young man out, and it worked. The things worked. You're not afraid to press it. So, that was the program. It's in the context of the college, of course. They were difficult times. As I said, the racial acts, the Vietnam War, we were all going to be drafted within 3 years. We have to decide what we want to do. And if we were going to go home or not. And then all of a sudden, President Nixon's decided he'd take the wind out of the sails of our movements by having a lottery, a draft lottery. So General Hershey got a hopper and a lot of ping pong balls in it. 365 of them on each ball is written a date, and if you're of your birthday, and if you got a high number, you wouldn't have to go. A low number, you would. So we're assembling the Elliott House Library and set up a TV and to watch them pick the numbers up. And this is a hell of a way to run a war, or anything. So some of the young people were going and jumping off the roof, and others were popping champagne. My number was 226, so I never had to go. We all remember our numbers from that time. The story that
Start. Peace.
we, I wanted to say that my loneliness and malaise was addressed by Madison and that community, and also by the community that I met at Brooks House, of people who are like me, similarly minded. You see yourselves now. You see how powerful you are. I know you all, but now that you can connect yourselves in brain, you can see the beauty and the power. That's what it meant to me. I met my lover there. We had many marriages made in Brooks House. Some of you sitting here married in Brooks House. And the year after I directed the program, Ken directed the program, and it was even stronger. We had, all kinds of education classes, Black history classes taught by Professor Nell Painter, who was very famous now. She was just our friend then, and we, the way kids say, why the hell do we have to go to Black history courses? And we said, because it's history, you can learn about it and know about it. And the people got along magnificently in Columbia Point. The Black community and the white community got along in Columbia Point. And public housing worked, public education worked. I've heard Ken say there are some times we can give speeches on. Back then, we didn't have homelessness because we had public housing, single room occupancy, places for people to live. And again, where the education is a mess. Well, it's not the education's fault. Anyway, this is a few weeks ago. Senator Warren, who lives around the corner, had discovered that she had discovered that the Stop and Shop grocery chain is selling subpar products, vegetables and meat, to poor communities at higher prices than in the suburbs. And she was outraged, and she was going to establish a committee to study. Okay, so in 1968, we discovered that the Stop and Shop next to Columbia Point was selling subpar groceries to the hostage community at too high prices. So we organized a boycott. And it was a great boycott because it was a community boycott where the kids were going to, the program kids were going to, we would get a bus and the program kids were going to help the seniors and the mothers go shopping. And we drive them to Freedom Foods, which was the black supermarket in Roxbury, as an alternative. We'd pick them up in front of the Stop and Shop, or to Waltham Market, Superior Food, or else to the welfare market in South Boston, where folks had to go to pick up their processed cheese and powdered milk, and that was difficult. And anyway, I'm writing this sort of biographical fiction. I've gotten one piece done from 68 to 78. It's certified sane by my friend who's here tonight, the great psychiatrist Sharon Weinstein, who's the boss of the class of 72. And I told her I suspect she may have been Ken's girlfriend too. So you see this writing is sane. So after you. So the boycott. Do we have enough vans and buses in order to, my name is Anders in this, Ken's is Kevin, and I think PBHA. Do we have enough vans and buses in order to boycott the Stop and Shop? We will by next week. I got a big yellow school bus and I'm gonna practice driving it in the parking lot in the state. Did you ever drive one before, man? No, but my Chevy 2 was a stick shift before it got blown up when we went to have lunch at Miss Jamison's. That was no painter's. We also have to make sure to have everything ready for the final show in 2 weeks, Kevin reminded. All on target, Jack assured. Jack became Andrew Lips of the body thing. Guys are that we're married that today. The Columbia Point Community Development Corporation gave us their bus, a regular old yellow school bus. It's the only thing big enough to fit all the folks who want to go to the welfare office for the processed cheese blocks. You're going to drive it through South Boston? We'll have to, because that's where the office is. Anders headed through the slit in the chain link fence over into the parking lot serving Alumni, Theirs, and Stop and Shop, the stores in that only market close. We had solicited them for the program, of course, that's how we funded these things. And upon solicitation for the Harvard Columbia Point Summer Program, Alumni's had contributed $300. The Zaire Corporation, $50. And Stop and Shop Incorporated, $25. This is not only community organizing, you know, we all taught ourselves what was going on. Stop and Shop was a source of complaints among neighbors for stock and produce and foods inferior to that offered at their other stores. In response, the summer program had fashioned a service which would drive residents to less expensive, higher quality stores, Waltham Supermarket, Freedom Foods, and the Welfare Distribution Center on Broadway in South Boston. Program youth would carry groceries for elders from the stores to the bus and up into their apartments. Anders got into the old bus and practiced driving it around the parking lot. On Tuesday, Anders headed out early, believing he was ready to make the drive with passengers. He parked his bus directly in front of Stop and Shop at noon, the time at which leaflets and word of mouth had advertised their service. This was to be the run to the welfare office, the run most subscribed as they only gave out food once a month. The school bus was besieged primarily by single mothers as well as by elderly folks needing a hand. The program kids were polite, excited, and committed. The bus filled quickly and Anders turned on the ignition. A sort of explosion occurred, sort of like Pat Brady starting up Nellyville. That's the Roy Rogers TV show, only a few guys back there. But then the engine started humming and banging along. Anders depressed the clutch and shifted the 5-gear stick shift into first. He stepped on the gas and tried to get the clutch to engage. The bus lurched and bucked so severely that people fell out of their seats all over the place, down onto the floor. Pocketbooks and supplies followed. The bus stalled. This is true. I mean, Scott Fisher. I am so sorry, Anders pleaded, turning his head around to address the people still in their seats as well as those strewn upon the floor. He was mortally embarrassed, his face turned hot red. He ain't never drove no bus before, but we couldn't get no one else. His junior counsel, Greg Sanford. And then the big white kids. Don't worry, we'll help everyone back into their seats, Mikey assured. And Carrie is a little guy who reminds you of Cat Williams. He did funny, I said. Pick up Mom's magic, Cabby ordered, happy to be in charge, but seriousness screwed upon his face. Don't worry, we know you're trying, Johnny's mother spoke in calm southern cadence, a noble attempt to keep Anders from tears. An elderly Irish woman backed her up. We're all in our seats now. Start her up again. He did. First gear a little smoother. Second gear, he had it now. Third gear as they turned out of the parking lot and up onto the rotary down Little Colony Avenue. He's so last page. He finally got his way, made his way onto Broadway slowly, without attempting fate by shifting into fifth. As they drove up the hill, they saw the distribution center on the left. This is South Boston. They also saw a whole bunch of people staring at them, wondering who the F they might be. All white folks. Yeah. There's a fat guy with a gun on his belt, Anders, and he ain't no cop, Cabby warned. Don't worry, we'll get out slowly and stand in the line. We'll be all right. Harry directed the junior counselors and kids to help the Columbia Point residents out of the bus with orderly politeness. And soon it was understood that these are the same folks who came to get stuff anyway, only this time out once and with harvested assistance. The distribution went like clockwork. Maximum bricks, cheese, and powdered milk were dispensed. Anders returned to the bus proudly and resumed his high perch in the driver's seat. The ride home went off without a hitch. We've got 5 stops scheduled, Anders, Pete read from his clipboard. 1 on Montpelier, 1 on Brandon, 1 on Monticello, and 2 on Mount Vernon. Anders made the first on Mount Vernon, where most of the elderly people lived. Cabby and Foot helped 2 overweight, gray-haired white ladies down from the bus into their apartments. One of the women used a walker with much effort. It took quite a long time. We don't take no tips, man, Cabby smiled and beamed. He was decked out in his finest light white jeans cuffed at the bottom by rolling them up himself and in his mock Adidas. I'd certainly give you one if I had anything left, Cat. I do hope you're doing this again next week. Thank you very much.